And this is where the conversation becomes deeply personal, because the patterns we carry around money are rarely created by money itself. I have found that financial abundance often reflects something much deeper than income, opportunity, or circumstance. Beneath every financial decision exists a network of beliefs, emotions, memories, and biological responses that quietly shape what we experience in the external world. Many people believe they are making rational financial choices. Yet when we look closely, we discover that emotions frequently guide the process long before logic arrives to justify it. Modern neuroscience shows that much of human behavior operates below conscious awareness. Long before we evaluate the situation intellectually, our nervous system has already begun interpreting what is safe, what is threatening, and what feels possible. This becomes especially important when we talk about wealth. If the body associates abundance with stress, pressure, conflict, or uncertainty, then even when opportunities appear, a hidden resistance may emerge. The conscious mind may say yes, while deeper systems quietly pull in the opposite direction. This creates an internal contradiction. We may visualize success, repeat positive statements, and work tirelessly toward financial goals, yet a deeper emotional pattern continues broadcasting a different message. The fascinating part is that the body does not respond primarily to words. The body responds to emotional signals. Emotion acts like a language that communicates directly with the nervous system. It influences hormones, heart rhythms, attention, decision-making, and even perception itself. When emotions remain dominated by fear, scarcity, or chronic uncertainty, the body adapts to that state. Over time, the state becomes familiar. And what becomes familiar often feels safe, even when it is limiting. This is one reason people can remain trapped in financial patterns they consciously want to escape. The challenge is not always a lack of information. The challenge is that the body has learned to identify with a particular reality. Ancient traditions understood this principle long before modern science began exploring the mechanisms behind it. Across many cultures, there was an understanding that human experience emerges from the relationship between thought, feeling, and action. None of these elements operated independently. Instead, they formed a unified system. Today, research into psychophysiology offers a similar perspective. Our emotional states influence biological processes, and those biological processes influence how we think, perceive, and behave. In other words, consciousness is not happening only in the brain. It is expressed throughout the body. When discussing financial abundance, this insight changes everything. Because abundance is not simply about acquiring more. It is also about becoming internally coherent. Coherence occurs when our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions move in the same direction. When there is coherence, energy is no longer wasted through internal conflict. Attention becomes clearer. Decisions become more intentional. Opportunities become easier to recognize. This does not mean the external world suddenly changes overnight. Rather, our relationship with the external world begins to transform. And that transformation often creates new outcomes. Consider how differently a person approaches life when operating from confidence rather than fear. The environment may remain exactly the same. The economy may remain the same. The available opportunities may remain the same. Yet the person's responses change dramatically. They notice possibilities that previously seemed invisible. They take actions they once avoided. They communicate with greater clarity. They develop stronger relationships. They persist through challenges that previously caused them to retreat. The external results begin changing because the internal state changed first. This principle forms a crucial part of what many people miss when discussing wealth. Financial abundance is not merely a condition. It is also a frequency of experience expressed through behavior, perception, and emotion. When I use the word frequency, I am not referring to magical thinking. I am describing patterns. Every emotional state generates measurable biological activity. Different emotional states produce different physiological conditions. These conditions influence how we interpret reality. And interpretation influences action. Action influences results. Results reinforce belief. Then the cycle repeats. Understanding this cycle allows us to interrupt it consciously. Instead of waiting for financial success to create feelings of security, we can begin cultivating internal stability before external evidence appears. This is not pretending, it is training. Just as muscles strengthen through repeated exercise, emotional patterns strengthen through repeated experience. The nervous system learns through repetition. Every time we practice gratitude, confidence, resilience, or appreciation, we reinforce corresponding neural pathways. Over time, those pathways become easier to access. Eventually, they begin feeling natural. And when a state feels natural, it requires less effort to maintain. This is where many breakthroughs occur, not because reality suddenly becomes easier, but because the individual is no longer fighting themselves. The energy previously consumed by doubt becomes available for creativity. The energy previously consumed by fear becomes available for vision. The energy previously consumed by internal conflict becomes available for meaningful action. From a biological perspective, this shift is significant. Stress narrows attention. Coherence expands it. Fear contracts perception. Confidence broadens perception. Scarcity thinking focuses exclusively on immediate survival. Abundance thinking allows the mind to explore future possibilities. Both states generate real consequences. Both influence behavior. Both influence outcomes. And perhaps the most important realization is that these states can be cultivated intentionally. They are not fixed traits. They are dynamic patterns. Patterns can be changed. The process begins with awareness. We must first recognize the stories operating beneath conscious thought. We must observe the emotional habits that shape our decisions. We must notice how the body responds when we imagine greater prosperity entering our lives. Because sometimes the most revealing answers emerge not from what we think about abundance, but from what we feel when abundance begins to seem possible. And once we start paying attention to those hidden emotional signals, we uncover something even more surprising about the relationship between consciousness and financial reality. Because beneath every belief about wealth exists an even deeper layer of human experience that most people never stop long enough to examine. Because beneath every belief about wealth exists an even deeper layer of human experience that most people never stop long enough to examine. That layer is identity. I have found that beliefs can change relatively quickly once we become aware of them, but identity operates differently. Identity is not simply what we think, it is who we believe ourselves to be. And this distinction matters more than most people realize. A person may believe financial abundance is possible. They may study success principles, learn investment strategies, and understand the psychology of achievement. Yet, if their identity remains connected to limitation, struggle, or unworthiness, they often find themselves returning to familiar patterns. The mind may move forward. The identity pulls backward. This creates a hidden tension that can persist for years. What makes identity so powerful is that the human nervous system naturally seeks consistency. We tend to make choices that reinforce our sense of self, even when those choices contradict our conscious goals. If someone unconsciously identifies as a person who always struggles financially, abundance may feel unfamiliar, and what feels unfamiliar can trigger discomfort. This is one of the great paradoxes of personal transformation. People often assume discomfort means they are moving in the wrong direction. Yet sometimes discomfort simply means they are entering territory that their old identity does not recognize. Growth requires a period of adaptation. The body must learn that a new reality is safe. The mind must learn that expanded possibilities are not threats. And consciousness must learn to operate from a larger vision of what is possible. Modern neuroscience offers fascinating insights into this process. The brain constantly creates predictive models based on past experiences. These models help us navigate the world efficiently, but they also create limitations. When new opportunities appear, the brain often interprets them through old expectations. Instead of seeing what is actually present, we see what we expect to find. This influences financial decisions more than many people realize. Two individuals can encounter the exact same opportunity and interpret it completely differently. One sees potential, the other sees danger, one sees growth. The other sees risk. Neither perception is entirely objective. Each is filtered through internal conditioning. This is why awareness is such a powerful tool. Awareness allows us to observe the filter rather than automatically believing it. The moment we recognize a pattern, we create space between ourselves and the pattern. That space is where transformation begins. For example, imagine someone receives an unexpected opportunity to increase their income. Their immediate reaction may reveal far more than the opportunity itself. Do they feel excitement? Do they feel anxiety? Do they immediately focus on reasons it might fail? Do they question whether they deserve it? These responses provide valuable information. They reveal the emotional architecture operating beneath conscious thought. And once that architecture becomes visible, it can be changed. This does not happen through force. It happens through consistent observation and intentional practice. The goal is not to suppress fear. The goal is to understand it. Fear often carries information. Sometimes it reflects genuine risk. Other times it reflects outdated programming that no longer serves us. Learning the difference is essential. When we become conscious of our emotional responses, we begin reclaiming energy that was previously trapped inside automatic reactions. That energy becomes available for creation. Creation is an important word here, because financial abundance is not solely about accumulation. At its deepest level, abundance reflects our capacity to create value. Value emerges from creativity, insight, service, innovation, relationships, and meaningful contribution. The more aligned we become internally, the more naturally these qualities emerge. People often search for abundance outside themselves while overlooking the source from which abundance grows. The source is consciousness itself. Every invention, business solution, and opportunity first existed as an idea. Before it appeared in the physical world, it existed within awareness. This does not mean consciousness magically creates money. It means consciousness shapes the quality of our participation in reality, and participation influences results. When our thoughts, emotions, and actions become aligned, we engage life differently. We communicate differently. We solve problems differently. We recognize possibilities that others overlook. Over time, these differences compound. Small shifts create larger outcomes. Larger outcomes create new experiences. New experiences reinforce a new identity. And gradually the cycle begins moving in a different direction. This process resembles the growth of a tree. From the outside, progress often appears slow. For long periods, very little seems to change. Yet beneath the surface, roots are expanding, systems are strengthening, foundations are developing. Then eventually, visible growth accelerates. The same principle applies to human transformation. The most important changes often occur before external results appear. This requires patience. In a culture that celebrates immediate outcomes, patience can feel uncomfortable. Yet many of the most meaningful transformations occur gradually. The nervous system learns gradually. Beliefs evolve gradually. Identity expands gradually. What matters is consistency. A small shift repeated daily often produces greater results than dramatic effort applied occasionally. This understanding changes how we approach financial growth. Instead of asking only, "What do I need to do?" we begin asking, "Who am I becoming?" That question directs attention toward the deeper process. Because every financial decision is also an identity decision. Every choice either reinforces an old pattern or supports a new one. Every action sends a message to the nervous system about what we believe is possible. Over time, those messages accumulate. Eventually, they become our lived experience. This is why intentional awareness remains so important. Without awareness, we repeat unconscious patterns. With awareness, we gain the ability to choose differently. And choice is where personal power begins, not power over other people. Not power over circumstances, but power over our own responses. The ability to consciously direct attention, emotion, and behavior is one of the most valuable capacities we possess. And when that capacity is developed, something remarkable starts to happen. The boundary between inner transformation and outer results becomes increasingly difficult to separate. The changes occurring within consciousness begin expressing themselves through behavior, relationships, opportunities, and decisions. What once felt impossible starts feeling attainable. What once felt distant starts feeling real. And as this process unfolds, we encounter another principle that may be even more important than belief, emotion, or identity itself. Because hidden beneath all three is a fundamental force that quietly shapes the way human consciousness interacts with possibility. And as this process unfolds, we encounter another principle that may be even more important than belief, emotion, or identity itself. Because hidden beneath all three is a fundamental force that quietly shapes the way human consciousness interacts with possibility. That force is attention. I have come to see attention as one of the most valuable forms of energy we possess. Every day, whether we realize it or not, we are investing our attention somewhere. We direct it toward problems, opportunities, fears, goals, memories, possibilities, or limitations. Where attention goes, experience often follows. This does not mean that simply thinking about something causes it to appear. Reality is far more complex than that. However, attention influences what we notice, what we prioritize, and ultimately how we respond to life. Most people underestimate the impact of this process. The human brain receives an overwhelming amount of information every second, yet only a tiny fraction reaches conscious awareness. To manage this enormous flow of data, the brain continuously filters information. The filter is influenced by what we believe is important. This means that our attention acts like a spotlight. Whatever falls within that spotlight becomes more visible. Whatever remains outside it often goes unnoticed. This has profound implications for financial abundance. If attention remains fixed on scarcity, lack, and limitation, the mind becomes highly skilled at identifying evidence that confirms those experiences. The world begins to appear filled with obstacles. Challenges seem larger. Opportunities seem smaller. Risks dominate perception. Possibilities fade into the background. At the same time, when attention becomes trained to recognize value, growth, learning, and opportunity, an entirely different experience begins to emerge. The external world may not change immediately, but perception changes, and perception influences behavior. Behavior influences outcomes. This is why mastering attention is not merely a mental exercise. It is a practical skill. Consider how often attention is fragmented in modern life. Notifications compete for focus. News cycles compete for emotion. Endless streams of information compete for awareness. The result is that many people spend their lives reacting rather than creating. Their attention is constantly being pulled outward. When attention becomes scattered, energy becomes scattered. When energy becomes scattered, intentional action becomes more difficult. This creates a subtle form of exhaustion. Not necessarily physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, the kind that slowly drains creativity and clarity. Yet something remarkable happens when attention becomes focused. The mind begins operating differently. Ideas connect more easily. Decisions become clearer. Priorities become more obvious. The noise begins to fade. And in that space, insight often emerges. Ancient traditions recognize the importance of focused awareness thousands of years ago. Modern cognitive science is now revealing similar principles through different language. Research suggests that attention influences learning, memory, emotional regulation, and decision-making. In other words, attention helps shape the quality of our experience. When applied to financial abundance, this understanding becomes extremely practical. Instead of constantly focusing on what is missing, we can consciously train ourselves to recognize what is available. Instead of obsessing over limitations, we can direct attention towards solutions. Instead of repeatedly reinforcing scarcity, we can strengthen awareness of possibility. This is not denial, it is balance. Ignoring challenges is not wisdom. Becoming consumed by challenges is not wisdom either. The goal is to see reality clearly while remaining connected to possibility. That combination creates resilience. Resilience is one of the most valuable qualities a person can develop. Financial journeys rarely unfold in a straight line. There are setbacks, unexpected obstacles, periods of uncertainty, moments when progress appears invisible. During those times, attention becomes especially important because whatever captures attention tends to influence emotional state, and emotional state influences action. A person focused entirely on temporary setbacks may lose momentum. A person who remains connected to a larger vision often continues moving forward despite difficulties. The circumstances may be identical. The attention pattern is different, and that difference can alter outcomes dramatically over time. I believe this is one reason why some individuals maintain extraordinary persistence while others give up too soon. Persistence is not simply a matter of willpower. It is often a reflection of where attention is directed. When attention remains connected to purpose, motivation tends to remain stronger. When attention becomes trapped in immediate frustration, progress often slows. This principle extends beyond personal finances. It influences relationships, health, learning, creativity, virtually every area of life. Attention shapes experience because it shapes engagement, and engagement shapes results. What makes this especially fascinating is the relationship between attention and emotion. The two are deeply connected. Attention influences emotion. Emotion influences attention. Together, they create powerful feedback loops. If attention repeatedly focuses on fear, emotional intensity often increases. As emotional intensity increases, attention becomes even more attracted to fearful thoughts. The cycle reinforces itself. The same mechanism can work in more constructive ways. Attention directed toward appreciation often strengthens positive emotional states. Those emotional states make it easier to recognize additional reasons for appreciation. Again, a feedback loop emerges. Understanding these loops allows us to become more intentional. Rather than being carried by automatic patterns, we begin participating consciously in the process. This does not require perfection. It requires awareness. Even small shifts in attention can create meaningful changes over time. A few moments of intentional reflection each day can gradually reshape emotional habits. A few moments spent focusing on solutions rather than problems can alter decision-making. A few moments spent reconnecting with purpose can restore motivation. These changes may seem minor, yet their cumulative effect can be extraordinary. Because consciousness is shaped through repetition, the experiences we repeat become familiar. The patterns that become familiar influence identity. Identity influences behavior. Behavior influences outcomes. Everything is connected, and as attention becomes more intentional, another realization begins to emerge. We start noticing that abundance is not merely something we pursue. It is also something we allow. Many people spend years trying to force outcomes while unknowingly resisting the very experiences they desire. The resistance is rarely conscious. It often exists beneath awareness, hidden within expectations, assumptions, and emotional conditioning. And when we finally begin exploring that hidden resistance, we uncover a deeper aspect of the human mind, one that reveals why some opportunities seem to flow effortlessly into a person's life, while others remain just beyond reach, no matter how hard they struggle to obtain them.
Let's take this idea even deeper, because understanding a concept intellectually is very different from experiencing it in everyday life. When we talk about financial abundance through the lens of consciousness, many people immediately assume we are discussing positive thinking. But what we are really exploring is something much more practical and much more powerful. We are exploring the relationship between attention, emotion, biology, and behavior. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like the navigation system in a car. The destination you enter into the system influences every route suggestion that follows. If the destination is programmed incorrectly, even the best roads will not take you where you want to go. Human consciousness works in a similar way. Our beliefs, emotional habits, and patterns of attention function like internal coordinates. They influence what we notice, how we interpret events, and what actions we choose to take. This is not philosophy alone, it reflects how the brain actually operates. Neuroscientists often describe the brain as a prediction machine. Rather than simply observing reality, the brain continuously predicts what it expects to encounter based on previous experiences. Think about buying a new vehicle. Before purchasing it, you may hardly notice that model on the road. Suddenly, after deciding to buy one, it seems like that vehicle is everywhere. The cars were always there. Your attention simply changed. The same principle applies to opportunities. If a person constantly focuses on scarcity, their attention becomes trained to identify reasons why something will not work. They become highly skilled at spotting obstacles. Another person may encounter the exact same situation but focus on possibilities and solutions. Both individuals are seeing reality, but they are seeing different parts of reality. This is one reason attention is so valuable. Attention acts like a spotlight in a dark room. Whatever the spotlight illuminates becomes clearer and more detailed. The rest fades into the background. Now let's connect this idea to emotion. Imagine two people preparing for an important job interview. One spends days imagining failure. They worry about rejection, embarrassment, and disappointment. The other prepares thoroughly but focuses on contributing value and sharing their strengths. When the interview begins, their emotional states will be completely different. Those emotional states influence body language, confidence, communication, and decision making. The opportunity is the same. The internal experience is not. This demonstrates a principle that appears repeatedly in both psychology and neuroscience. Our emotional state affects our performance. Many people think emotions are simply feelings. In reality, emotions are also biological events. Every emotional experience triggers chemical and physiological changes throughout the body. Fear can increase muscle tension and narrow attention. Confidence can improve focus and flexibility. Appreciation can support emotional regulation and mental clarity. The body is constantly responding to the emotional signals we generate. This helps explain why chronic stress can become so limiting. When the nervous system spends long periods operating in survival mode, attention naturally becomes focused on immediate threats. This response is useful during genuine emergencies. However, when it becomes a permanent way of living, creativity and long-term thinking often suffer. Imagine trying to plan a beautiful garden while constantly running from a fire. Your energy remains focused on survival. Growth becomes difficult. Many people approach financial goals from this exact state. They are trying to build abundance while their nervous system remains trapped in protection mode. This is why emotional regulation matters so much. It is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about creating enough internal stability to think clearly and act intentionally. One practical exercise involves observing your emotional reactions without immediately judging them. The next time you think about money, opportunities, career growth, or future goals, pause for a moment. Notice what happens in your body. Do your shoulders tighten? Does your breathing change? Do you feel excitement, anxiety, doubt, or possibility? Simply observe. Awareness is the first step toward transformation. Many people try to change their lives before they fully understand their current patterns. But lasting change often begins with observation. Another useful practice involves intentional attention training. At the end of each day, write down 3 opportunities, solutions, or positive developments you noticed. They do not need to be dramatic. Perhaps you learned a new skill. Perhaps someone offered helpful advice. Perhaps you discovered a new possibility for personal growth. This exercise trains the brain to recognize resources instead of focusing exclusively on problems. Over time, attention begins to shift naturally. A second practical application involves identity. Ask yourself a simple question. What kind of person am I becoming? Notice that this question is different from asking what you want. Most people focus entirely on outcomes. Identity focuses on process. A person who consistently develops discipline, curiosity, resilience, and emotional balance often creates different results than someone who focuses only on short-term rewards. The goal is not merely achieving abundance. The goal is becoming the kind of person who can create, manage, and sustain abundance. This distinction changes everything. Think of a tree. Healthy fruit appears because the roots, soil, water, and environment support growth. The fruit is the visible result. The invisible systems make the fruit possible. Human development follows a similar pattern. External results often reflect internal conditions. When we strengthen attention, emotional awareness, resilience, and clarity, we improve the foundation from which our actions emerge. This does not guarantee instant success. Life remains unpredictable. Challenges will still arise. Unexpected setbacks will still occur, but our relationship with those challenges changes. Instead of reacting automatically, we respond consciously. Instead of becoming trapped by fear, we access greater flexibility. Instead of focusing exclusively on limitations, we maintain awareness of possibilities. And perhaps that is one of the most important lessons of all. Financial abundance is not simply about accumulating resources. It is about developing a state of consciousness capable of recognizing opportunities, managing emotions wisely, maintaining focus, and taking consistent action aligned with a meaningful vision. When attention, emotion, biology, and behavior begin working together rather than competing against one another, something powerful happens. The energy once lost through internal conflict becomes available for growth. And that growth begins not in the external world, but within the quality of awareness we bring to each moment, each decision, and each opportunity that appears before us.